That night, I lay curled up on the couch I bought, under a blanket that reeked of Axe cologne, a scent I never wore. It clung to the fabric like a reminder that I no longer had a place in my own home. The reason I was there? Because I asked my brother-in-law to help pay for groceries. That's it. No shouting, no ultimatums. Just a request. One any adult would understand. But in this house, it made me the bad guy. The ungrateful one. The monster. And so I slept on the couch that night. Not because I was wrong, but because I had finally dared to speak up. My name is Daniel Morgan. I'm 38 years old. I work in IT infrastructure management for a logistics firm in Houston. I'm not rich, not flashy, but I'm steady, reliable. I show up, I plan, I pay bills on time. That's the kind of man I am. Or was anyway, before I became invisible in my own marriage. Alyssa and I met at a friend's New Year's party. She was smart, assertive, fiercely loyal to the people she loved. That last part I admired most. Or maybe I should say, I used to. We married after 2 years of dating, bought a small 3-bedroom on the east side of town. It wasn't fancy, but it had a fenced yard, a garage I could tinker in, and enough space to one day raise kids. For a while, it felt like everything was falling into place. Until Mason showed up, Alyssa's younger brother, 29. A bit aimless, the kind of guy who always had a plan, but never a job. He'd been living with a girlfriend in Dallas, until according to Alyssa, she did him dirty. He lost the apartment, the job, the relationship, all in a week. I just want to help him back on his feet, Alyssa had said one night, standing in our kitchen with worry on her face and hope in her voice. He just needs a few weeks. He's family, Danny. Please. Of course, I said yes. What else was I going to do? Say no to my wife when her brother had nowhere to go? That was 15 months ago. 15 months of just a few weeks. 15 months of slowly watching my home become something I no longer recognized. At first, I didn't complain. That's what you do for family, right? You help them out when they fall, offer them shelter, give them time. I'd done it before. When my older brother went through his divorce, I let him crash in my apartment. He was gone in 6 weeks, and he paid for everything he used. That's what grown adults do. But Mason was different. From the moment he arrived, he treated our home like an all-inclusive resort. No boundaries, no appreciation. He walked in with 2 duffel bags and a gaming console, dropped them in the guest room, and settled in like he'd booked a year-long vacation. He never once said thank you, never once offered to pay rent, cover groceries, or even do the damn dishes. He borrowed my tools and left them rusting outside. He took my truck to run errands and brought it back with fast food wrappers on the floor and an empty gas tank. He used the last of the milk and left the carton in the fridge. He stayed up until 3 a.m. playing Call of Duty in the room next to ours, shouting into his headset like he was a drill sergeant. And the worst part? He started ordering takeout on my credit card. He claimed it was a mistake, said he'd saved my card to his DoorDash by accident. Funny how that mistake happened 4 times in a single week. I brought it up, gently at first. Over dinner one night, I cleared my throat and said, maybe Mason could help out with the utility bills, even just a little? Alyssa didn't even look up from her plate. He's family, she said. He's going through a rough time. Why are you being so cold, Daniel? Cold. That word stuck in my chest like a shard of ice. I wasn't being cold. I was being reasonable, responsible. I was trying to hold this household together while it slowly collapsed under the weight of 3 people living on one person's income. My overtime at work had been cut back. Alyssa's clinic had reduced her hours. We were barely scraping by. And Mason's presence, his video games, his streaming habits, his appetite, had driven our utility bills and grocery costs through the roof. But every time I brought it up, every time I even hinted at needing help, I became the enemy. Insensitive, harsh, ungrateful. He's depressed, Alyssa would say. He needs time. You don't just bounce back overnight after a breakup. That breakup was over a year ago. At some point, time to heal becomes time to grow up. Still, I tried. I really did. I told myself it was temporary, that things would get better, that Mason just needed a little push in the right direction. But the only thing that changed was me. I began waking up earlier to avoid seeing him. I started working through lunch just to delay going home. I watched my own house become a place I no longer looked forward to returning to. A place where I felt more like an intruder than a man with a mortgage. And Alyssa, she noticed, but not in the way I hoped. She didn't ask how I was holding up. She didn't offer to talk to her brother. She just grew colder, more distant, defensive every time I mentioned Mason's name. I wasn't losing my patience. I was losing my wife. It happened on a Wednesday, the kind of quiet, ordinary evening that shouldn't have meant anything. We had leftover pasta for dinner. Mason was glued to his phone the entire time, barely grunting through Alyssa's questions about his day. The TV murmured some crime drama in the background. Dishes piled in the sink. Again. But I'd had enough. That morning, I'd checked our joint account and saw another Sixter cash withdrawal marked miscellaneous, the third one in as many months. Alyssa had waved them off before. Gift for a coworker. Car repairs. Don't worry about it. But I knew where the money was going. I just didn't want to say it out loud. After dinner, I waited for the dishwasher to finish humming its lazy cycle. Then I grabbed the laptop from the kitchen counter, opened the spreadsheet I'd been updating for weeks, and sat down across from them at the table. No raised voices, no accusations, just numbers. Our expenses have gone up by 63% since Mason moved in, I began. I showed them line by line, groceries, electricity, gas, takeout, subscriptions. I didn't embellish. I didn't editorialize. I just showed them. Then I looked at Mason and said as calmly as I could, "It's been over a year. I think it's more than fair to ask you to help out, even just with food and utilities. If that's not possible, then we really do need to talk about other living arrangements." For a second, silence. Then Mason leaned back in his chair and laughed. Not a nervous chuckle, not a sheepish grin, a full, open-mouthed laugh, like I'd just told him the dumbest joke he'd ever heard. "Other arrangements," he repeated, eyes wide in disbelief. "Bro, I'm your wife's brother. You don't charge family. That's insane." And before I could respond, Alyssa jumped in like she'd been waiting for this moment. "Daniel," she said, voice sharp, "that's cruel. Mason is in pain. He lost everything. This is what support looks like." Support. That's what she called it. Watching our savings bleed dry. Watching her brother treat our home like a frat house. Support. My hands tightened around the edge of the table. I could feel the muscles in my jaw clenching. Not from rage, but from the effort of staying calm. I wasn't trying to fight. I was trying to save what little balance we had left. "I'm not asking for rent," I said. "I'm not even asking for back pay. I just need help. We need help." But they weren't listening. They'd already decided who the bad guy was. That night, when I came out of the shower, my clothes were no longer in the bedroom. They were on the couch, dumped in a pile like forgotten laundry. Alyssa stood in the hallway with her arms crossed. "You should sleep out here tonight," she said. "You need to think about how you treat my brother." There it was, my punishment. Not for yelling, not for threatening, but for daring to ask for fairness, for daring to speak like a husband, like a man who helped pay the mortgage, like someone who thought this was his home. I sat down on the couch in silence, still damp from the shower, still stunned by the clarity that was beginning to settle into my bones. I looked around at the walls I'd painted, the furniture I'd picked out, the home I thought we'd built together. And I realized something terrifying. This wasn't a home anymore. Not for me. So I did. I lay there in the dark, the cushions too soft, the blanket too thin, my clothes still damp from the hallway confrontation. And I thought about how I was sleeping on the couch in the house I helped pay for. I thought about how many times I'd picked up after Mason without a thank you. How many times I'd swallowed my frustration when Alyssa brushed my concerns aside like they were an inconvenience. How often I'd justified, minimized, rationalized. I thought about the money, the $3,000 that had slowly leaked from our joint account like a silent wound. Withdrawals labeled with vague excuses, cash handed over to a man who spent his days gaming, eating takeout, and treating me like an unwanted guest in my own home. Most of all, I thought about silence, how I'd stayed quiet to keep the peace, but peace never came, only resentment. At around 3 o'clock a.m., I got up and made coffee. The kitchen was cold, the floor chilled against my bare feet. I sat at the table with a mug in my hands and realized I wasn't making a plan to fix anything. I was making a plan to leave, not in anger, not with bitterness, just with the calm certainty that no one was coming to save me, and I didn't have to stay where I was unwanted. I opened my laptop, typed one-bedroom apartment Houston into the search bar, set the filter to available now, called in a personal day at work, and finally, for the first time in months, I exhaled. The next morning, I was still sitting at the kitchen table when Alyssa came downstairs. She was dressed for work, eyes puffy but composed, like nothing had happened. She moved around the kitchen briskly, grabbed her travel mug, and only then noticed the coffee machine still warm. "You left it on all night," she said without looking at me. I didn't answer that. Instead, I sipped from my mug and said quietly, "I made fresh coffee at 3:30. That made her pause. She turned to look at me, brow furrowing. "Daniel, about last night, I've been thinking, maybe I didn't listen properly when you tried to explain. Maybe I overreacted." Her voice softened, as if expecting me to soften too, as if she'd grown used to the version of me who always backed down. "I think we both said things we didn't mean," she offered. "And Mason, well, he's family. You know that." I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time in a long while, I saw her not as my wife, but as someone who had made a choice. Not once, but repeatedly. "I'm taking a personal day today," I said. "We need to have a real conversation about what this marriage is, and whether it still works for both of us." The softness vanished. She sat her mug down a little too hard. "Are you seriously threatening divorce because I defended my brother?" "I'm not threatening anything," I said calmly. "I'm finally telling the truth. I feel like I've been invisible in this house for over a year, and now I'm done pretending that's normal." She opened her mouth, closed it, then turned her back to me and grabbed a paper towel to wipe the mug ring off the counter. I didn't follow her. I didn't beg. I didn't argue. That afternoon, I signed a lease on a quiet one-bedroom apartment 10 miles north. I used money from a personal account Alyssa didn't know about, a small emergency fund I'd been building just in case. This qualified as an emergency. By 4 p.m., I had moved half my clothes, my toolbox, my laptop, and a few pieces of furniture that were mine before the marriage. Mason came downstairs once, said, "You moving?" I nodded. He shrugged and walked to the fridge like none of it concerned him. Of course it didn't. I left a note for Alyssa on the kitchen counter, propped against the coffee maker, the same one I'd used the night I stopped being quiet. "I'm done being treated like a guest in my own home. I'm done being shut down and lied to. You made your choice. Now I've made mine." That evening, I sat in my new apartment. One lamp, one chair, a small TV. It wasn't much, but it was mine. And it was peaceful. My phone buzzed with messages from Alyssa. I didn't answer. 3 days passed. Then a knock on my door. It was Alyssa, eyes red, hands trembling. "Mason's gone," she said. "He left. Took everything. Even the necklace you gave me. Even Grandma's. Ring." I said nothing. "I can't afford the house on my own," she continued. "The bank said foreclosure will start in 30 days if I don't bring the payments current." Still, I said nothing. "I know I messed up. I know I should have listened, should have seen what was happening. Please, Daniel, I'll go to counseling. I'll do whatever it takes. Just come home." I looked at her, the woman I once loved, the woman who had for over a year chosen convenience over honesty, loyalty to dysfunction over loyalty to me. "I'm home," I said. She blinked. "You know what I mean?" I nodded. "Yes, I do. And the answer is still no." She cried then, quietly at first, then louder, begging me not to leave her behind. I didn't yell. I didn't comfort. I let her feel what I had felt, the coldness of being unheard. 6 months later, I ran into her cousin at a hardware store. He told me she'd lost the house, moved in with a friend, working 2 jobs just to make rent. No one had seen Mason since. Apparently, he'd borrowed from half the family and burned every bridge behind him. But me? I was okay. Better than okay. I'd learned to cook for myself again, took long walks at sunset, started sleeping through the night without the tension in my chest. And I realized something. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is leave.